thanks everyone. Today I'm going to be focusing on a project that I worked on from a previous data set that was made in 2017, and I'm going to be examining ethnicity as a moderator of the relation between pre-parent factors and actual/perceived knowledge of ASD. So a little bit of background. A lot of times when we think about knowledge of ASD or knowledge of a neurodevelopmental disability, oftentimes we are gathering that information from caregivers where they have children with a neurodevelopmental disability. There is little known about parenting knowledge in pre-parents. We also know that there may be some ethnic/racial disparities within diagnoses of children for autism spectrum disorder. And some research supports that this may be due to a lack of awareness of early signs of neurodevelopmental delay. And when detecting, we know that it's super important to detect these signs of neurodevelopmental delay because we know that means sooner intervention and better long-term outcomes. So for example, some research suggests that there are better outcomes in social functioning and communication if you can get that early diagnosis and then that early intervention. All right, so the present study aimed to look at how prior experience of children, undergraduate education, and family socioeconomic status may relate to pre-parents' actual and perceived ASD knowledge, and how ethnicity may moderate those relations. So you can see here that we're investigating the relationship of these three variables: experience, education of the pre-parent, socioeconomic status of the pre-parent's family, and investigating the relation to actual knowledge versus perceived knowledge of ASD. And we're seeing here if ethnicity is a potential moderator. All right, so with participants, again, this was data collected from a study in 2017, also looking at, with the goal of looking at pre-parent knowledge. We extracted data from 221 undergraduate students who were identified as pre-parents. To identify as a pre-parent, they had to, one, consider having children in the future, and two, not have children currently. And participants completed the following measures. So we had a form of assessing ASD knowledge, and that was using a survey of knowledge of autism spectrum disorder. And again, assessing that perceived knowledge, what you think you know about ASD, and then actual knowledge. And then there was also a demographic questionnaire that participants filled out, and that was to assess age, gender, family socioeconomic status, ethnicity, and then as well as experience with children. So they could basically indicate 1 to 5 different roles that they have had with children, and then previous enrollment in WSU psychology courses. So we made basically different composite variables to get at that experience and the class time, basically by summing the items that they endorsed. All right, so we can see that 0 order correlations indicated that ethnicity related to family SES and to knowledge of ASD. So specifically, white participants had significantly more perceived and actual knowledge of ASD and also higher SES. When we conducted 6 moderated multiple regressions, we found that basically experience, amount of class time, and family SES were significant predictors on their own of the amount of perceived and actual knowledge that you're going to have. There are some exceptions that we had some marginal significance here with the perceived ASD, but overall we saw a trend that they were predictors on their own. When we looked at then the interaction effects and the interaction terms, we then saw that ethnicity and experience predicted unique variance in actual knowledge. So when we explore that interaction a little further here, we could see that the positive relation between child experience and perceived or actual ASD knowledge only emerged for white participants and not non-white participants. So the levels of experience did not basically impact for non-white participants their amount of knowledge, both for perceived and actual. So you can see here that when we go from low experience to high experience, for white participants, we see a significant change in slope, but not so much in the case of non-white participants. So a couple different things happening. We have evidence to support that ethnicity, family SES, and child experience contributes to participants' ASD knowledge. These are, individual differences and sociocultural factors that we should just be taking into consideration when we're learning more about pre-parent knowledge within the field. And there was a lack of a finding of a contribution from classes, suggesting that maybe the psychology curriculum needs to place a heavier emphasis on neurodevelopmental differences. Also, I would like to, for future research, see if there was specific courses that maybe was contributing to the variability of ASD knowledge. And lastly, that interaction between ethnicity and experience indicated that non-white participants may rely on factors other than experience with children when acquiring ASD knowledge, that there may be something else going on there. One thing I was thinking of possibly is that we already know there's ethnic and racial disparities in diagnosis. So if you have less children in your community with an ASD diagnosis, that's potentially less exposure to neurodevelopmental differences, et cetera. Yeah, that was just one idea. And that is it. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. And I know we are getting a little close on timing here, but does anyone have any questions, comments for Sarah?
I have a question, Sarah.
Yes.
I was thinking about other potential sources for pre-parents to get the knowledge. Just in their community, like you mentioned toward the end, in college classrooms. And one thing that just sort of came to mind for me was, I don't know if this is true, but it may be that like higher SES school districts are more capable of integrating children with disabilities into the classroom with typically their peers and maybe learn. Is that something you guys have looked into at all or started to consider?
No, but that's an interesting reasoning as to why we might be seeing that interaction there. And that mainstreaming just may be functioning differently depending on type of schooling that people are receiving within different socioeconomic groups. Yeah, that's really interesting. We haven't considered that yet.
Yeah, and then I was just generally thinking, like, I was also asking if there are other things that y'all had sort of thought about in addition to just the classrooms.
Oh, okay.
The classes, the WSU classes. I answered the question by saying a possible reason, but were there others that?
Yeah, so right within that data set, the variables that really were available to us were experience and number of classes they were taking. That was about it. There was like maybe some other demographic variables like occupation plans. That might be interesting to see if somebody's geared more towards, a child care track, if we would see differences there. But yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.